What if one of the most iconic figures in music, someone whose empire has spanned decades, was suddenly dragged into a federal courtroom on charges that could destroy everything he's built? This isn't some fictional story, it's the real-life trial of Sean Diddy Combs, a case that has left even the most seasoned courtroom experts speechless. Day 24 of Diddy's federal sex trafficking trial brought shocking moments, with explosive evidence that no one saw coming. Explicit videos shown to the jury, witness testimonies that send chills down your spine, and a shocking juror shakeup, all unfolding before the public's eyes. But here's the twist. Not everything is as it seems. Did the man who built a music empire actually orchestrate a criminal network? Or is this a case of false accusations built on scandal and sensationalism? Stay tuned, because what happened next will have you questioning everything you thought you knew. On day 24 of Sean Diddy Combs' federal sex trafficking trial, the atmosphere in the courtroom was anything but ordinary. Diddy, known for his larger-than-life persona, walked in wearing a simple pale blue sweater. Calm, collected, and seemingly unfazed, he took his seat at the defense table, even flashing his signature heart-shaped gesture to the gallery while mouthing the words, "I love you." The cool confidence was unmistakable, but that facade didn't last long. As the day unfolded, the prosecution took center stage, presenting a clinical, no-nonsense approach to their case. There were no emotional testimonies or dramatic accusations, just cold, hard evidence. Digital receipts, text messages, and detailed charts laid out the scope of the allegations, evidence that was undeniably compelling and, frankly, chilling. The jury was bombarded with facts, as the prosecution carefully connected the dots between Diddy, his inner circle, and the disturbing activities tied to his empire. But the real shock came when the government introduced explicit video evidence. For the first time in the trial, jurors were shown the disturbing footage that had been hinted at earlier in the proceedings. This wasn't hearsay or rumors anymore. It was raw, undeniable proof that painted a grim picture of the reality behind Diddy's lavish lifestyle. Amidst the tense proceedings, the courtroom also buzzed with whispers about Kanye West's absence from the witness list. The pop culture icon had been rumored to be involved, but he didn't show up. Was this a sign that he'd be called to testify later, or was his presence simply a distraction? As the day drew to a close, the trial had shifted from speculation to irrefutable evidence, leaving everyone in the room wondering, could this be the beginning of the end for Diddy's empire? Just when the courtroom thought it had seen it all, the prosecution dropped a bombshell that had the entire room on edge. It was time for the jury to confront the reality of the allegations head-on. Explicit video evidence that, until now, had only been hinted at. This wasn't a story told through words or images. It was a visceral experience that left no room for doubt. The government's plan was clear. They weren't just going to present testimony. They were going to make sure the jury saw the truth. The videos, some lasting as long as 40 minutes, were played in their entirety, strictly for the jury, the judge, and the key players in the trial. No public access, no open viewing. The decision was made to protect the victims and to avoid further re-victimization by exposing these intimate, explicit moments to the public eye. But even with the protections in place, the impact of what the jury was about to witness was undeniable. As the footage rolled, the room was thick with tension. For many jurors, this was an experience far beyond their typical courtroom proceedings. The graphic nature of the videos, their raw, unfiltered content, left little to the imagination. The disturbing reality of the events being shown created an atmosphere of discomfort that rippled through the courtroom. Several jurors struggled to process what they were seeing, their reactions varying from turning away to covering their faces, trying to block out the horrifying imagery. In a surreal twist, some jurors were so visibly shaken that they had trouble keeping their headphones properly in place, causing the sound to bleed into the gallery. Whispers spread through the room as audible moaning and disturbing sounds leaked out. The spectacle left the audience wondering, how would this affect the jurors' view of the case going forward? And more importantly, how would this change the trajectory of the trial? Just as the courtroom drama reached a fever pitch, a sudden twist threw everything into disarray: the removal of juror number 6. This wasn't just another ordinary juror shuffle. This decision was charged with controversy and loaded with implications. Juror number 6, who had been a part of the panel since the trial's start, was dismissed early in the day, and the reason behind the move sent shockwaves through the courtroom. The judge cited concerns that juror number 6 had not been entirely truthful during the vetting process, specifically about his living arrangements. According to the judge, the juror had misrepresented his primary residence, claiming to live in the Bronx, when in fact he had been residing part-time in New Jersey with his girlfriend. This discrepancy raised serious questions about the juror's integrity, leaving the court no choice but to dismiss him. The timing of the dismissal was crucial. By this point, the trial had already been ongoing for several weeks, and juror number 6 had witnessed much of the testimony. The decision to remove him mid-trial was jarring, and Diddy's defense team was quick to voice their objections. They argued that removing juror number 6 would disrupt the diversity of the jury panel, as the new juror replacing him was white. The defense contended that the racial dynamics of the jury could be affected, adding another layer of tension to the already high-stakes trial. Despite the defense's objections, Judge Subramanian stood firm. He rejected their motion for a mistrial, stating that the integrity of the trial was paramount and ordered that the new juror take his place. The drama didn't end there, however, as whispers continued about the potential impact this move could have on the trial's outcome. Was this just a procedural move, or was it the start of something much larger? As the prosecution pressed on, they unveiled an arsenal of digital evidence that would shake the very foundations of the case. The jury was bombarded with shocking text messages, each one a chilling window into the inner workings of Diddy's alleged criminal enterprise. These weren't just random exchanges. They were meticulously curated by the prosecution to piece together a narrative of drugs, abuse, and manipulation, all orchestrated behind the glitzy facade of Diddy's empire. One of the most explosive pieces of evidence came from a series of texts involving Diddy's chief of staff, Christina "KK" Kororum. The messages painted a picture of not just a boss giving orders, but of a man weaving a web of control and coercion. Texts about drug deals, freak-off hotel arrangements, and discussions about his tumultuous relationship with his ex-girlfriend Cassie were presented in cold, unflinching detail. One text in particular stood out, a message from Diddy that read, 15 pills of Molly, a casual, almost nonchalant request for a dangerous drug. It was followed by another message, ready, don't text about it. The matter-of-fact tone and the urgency in his words sent a stark message to the jury. Diddy wasn't just an entertainer, he was allegedly a man running a criminal operation, using his staff as pawns in a much larger game. But it wasn't just the drug-related texts that stood out. Messages detailing abuse, control, and fear were also shown, especially ones from Cassie. Texts where she confided in KK about being physically harmed by Diddy, no one deserves being dragged by the hair, revealed the dark side of their relationship. These texts, combined with the other evidence, formed a devastating narrative that was impossible to ignore. As the jury saw these messages, the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the prosecution's case was gaining undeniable strength. As the trial reached its most harrowing moments, the voices of the victims echoed in the courtroom, their testimonies adding a powerful layer to the prosecution's case. Two women at the heart of the allegations, Cassie Ventura and a woman identified only as Jane, took the stand, sharing chilling accounts of their experiences under Diddy's control. Their stories weren't just difficult to hear, they were a raw, unfiltered look into a world of manipulation, fear, and abuse that had long remained hidden. Cassie's testimony was particularly devastating. The former girlfriend of Diddy, she recounted instances of physical and emotional abuse that she claimed had been a constant throughout their relationship. One of the most harrowing messages she sent to Diddy's assistant, KK, read, "No one deserves being dragged by the hair. I locked the door for my safety." These texts, presented in court, painted a picture of a woman trapped in a cycle of fear, unable to break free from the toxic grip of Diddy's power. Cassie spoke of being emotionally scarred and physically harmed, revealing that the alleged abuse wasn't just occasional, it was part of a larger, calculated system of control. The jury heard these words, and they could no longer deny the grim reality that was unfolding before them. Jane's testimony only added to the weight of the accusations. She spoke about her own experiences with Diddy, describing how she was subjected to a similar pattern of abuse and manipulation. She recalled moments of coercion where she was forced into situations that she did not want to be in. Yet she also testified about the times when she found the strength to resist Diddy's demands, as in a text to KK, "My answer to him is no, and it is still no." This declaration of resistance stood as a symbol of Jane's eventual refusal to be controlled, even within the confines of a toxic relationship. Together, the testimonies of Cassie and Jane provided the jury with a devastating glimpse into the alleged abuse Diddy had imposed on those closest to him. Their voices, once silenced, were now a critical part of a trial that could expose the truth about the dark side of fame. As the trial progressed, the courtroom was rocked by a series of shocking revelations that exposed the true depth of the alleged crimes tied to Sean Diddy Combs. The prosecution had spent weeks laying out evidence, but it was these moments, the unexpected disclosures, that turned the tide in the case, forcing the jury to grapple with the darkest corners of Diddy's empire. One of the most explosive moments came when the government presented a phone call between Diddy and Jane, one of his former girlfriends. In this call, Jane chillingly confessed that the allegations made by Cassie Ventura in her bombshell 2023 lawsuit were eerily similar to her own experiences. She told Diddy, "They were word for word my experience too." The gravity of these words sent a shockwave through the courtroom. It wasn't just Cassie now, it was another woman corroborating the horrific pattern of abuse and manipulation. The call, which had previously only been referenced by witnesses, was now an undeniable piece of evidence, revealing a damning truth. Diddy's behavior wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a broader, systematic pattern. This revelation struck at the core of the defense's argument, suggesting that Diddy wasn't just an alleged abuser. He was orchestrating a network of control, fear, and exploitation. But the shock didn't stop there. The prosecution also unveiled more incriminating text messages, including one from Diddy to his assistant, where he requested 15 pills of Molly for a trip. It was a casual, almost careless request that painted a picture of a man who was not only involved in illicit activities, but was using his staff as pawns in his criminal empire. With each shocking revelation, the weight of the evidence grew heavier, and the jury was left with no choice but to confront the unsettling reality of Diddy's alleged criminal behavior. What had started as a high-profile celebrity case was rapidly becoming a tale of corruption, manipulation, and abuse, leaving everyone in the courtroom wondering, how much darker would this story get? As the prosecution presented its evidence, the defense wasted no time in launching its counteroffensive, aiming to undermine the narrative being built against Sean Diddy Combs. The defense team's strategy was clear: cast doubt on the credibility of the accusations and shift the focus onto possible alternative interpretations of the evidence. First, they attacked the text messages, which had become one of the prosecution's strongest pillars. The defense pointed to messages between Diddy and his former personal assistant, Mia, as evidence of nothing more than a casual check-in. Diddy's text, "I don't want to be blowing up your phone, just needed to talk to you for 10 minutes, was presented as a harmless inquiry, a simple request for clarity on past events. His lawyer argued that this wasn't harassment or manipulation. It was a man reconnecting with someone who had been a part of his team for years. The defense insisted that this could be interpreted as a benign attempt to refresh his memory, not an indication of any sinister motive. The defense also focused on the messages from Jane, another accuser, to Diddy's assistant, KK. One message, in which Jane expressed excitement about a freak-off night, was used to challenge the prosecution's narrative of coercion and fear. The defense painted this as evidence that Jane, far from being forced into these events, had participated willingly. By showing texts like, "I'm excited to surprise him," they tried to demonstrate that the women involved in these alleged acts were not victims but active participants. Perhaps the most powerful counterpoint the defense made was highlighting the lack of direct involvement from Diddy in some of the incriminating texts. They argued that while his staff may have been involved in organizing illicit activities, the absence of Diddy's explicit instruction in the communications was crucial. Despite these attempts to shift the focus, the defense's arguments seemed to struggle against the mounting evidence. Each counterargument was met with skepticism, and the jury could not ignore the weight of the prosecution's case. The defense had put up a fight, but it remained to be seen whether their efforts would be enough to dismantle the prosecution's narrative. As the trial unfolds, the question remains: will Diddy's empire crumble under the weight of these damning accusations, or will his defense team succeed in turning the tide? The shocking revelations, including the disturbing videos, explosive texts, and testimonies from Cassie and Jane, have left the jury with a difficult decision. As the defense tries to cast doubt, the evidence continues to mount, and the truth becomes harder to ignore. But we're just getting started. With more witnesses lined up and new twists around every corner, the full extent of Diddy's alleged actions is yet to be revealed. What happens next could change everything. Stay tuned as we bring you the latest updates from inside the courtroom. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay on top of this jaw-dropping trial. What do you think? Will Diddy be held accountable, or will he walk free? Let us know in the comments.